Welcome to Latino Free Minds, where we amplify voices, uncover truths, and champion justice. This is the second episode of our Watchdog Series, where we shine a spotlight on the unsung heroes of our communities, everyday people standing as watchdogs against local corruption. A watchdog is more than just a title, it's a commitment to vigilance, accountability, and action. These are our neighbors, activists, and advocates who keep a keen eye on local government, exposing mismanagement, challenging abuse of power, and fighting for transparency. From grassroots campaigns to bold whistleblowing, they're making a difference, one courageous step at a time. Today, we dive into their stories, their struggles, and their victories. So stay tuned as we explore how these community watchdogs are protecting our rights and holding corruption accountable. Right here on Latino Free Minds. Let's get started. Yo, hey Denise, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I think Danny had to switch something out. That's why he kind of disappeared on us. But thank you for coming back on the show. Last time we had you on, you were running for state assembly. I guess sorry, it left my mind
Yeah.
real quick. Um, how did that all go for you? Just give us like a little recap of what that experience was like, and then we'll get into all the current stuff.
It was intense. I was a first time runner. I had a very short amount of time. Usually people campaign for a little over a year. I had about 9 months and $40,000, but I walked out with 46% of the vote in a plus 25% Democrat district. So we actually had the highest turnout for a Republican candidate since 2010. So we did great, I think. But I'm a homeschool mom, so it was really hard for me to campaign, and so I don't really think I'm going to do that again.
I can imagine. I mean, I homeschool as well, right? We homeschool and we got full time jobs, so it gets hard. It's easy to fall behind if you don't stay on top of it.
Totally. I mean, I was dragging my son to all of the meetings, but something had to give. So, no, I'm just now, going back to, and honestly, I just feel like, as a legislator, I wouldn't have as much ability to move things as I do out here.
Mhm.
So they're very restricted in there, especially being a super majority of Democrats. So I'm pretty happy where I'm at, working grassroots and trying to get families involved in legislation.
Would you, before we move on to current stuff, would you say the person, what was her name, Rhodesia? Is that the person that won? Something like that?
Yeah, Rhodesha Ransom.
Has she been representing you guys well?
You know what? I'm going to give her credit where it's due. Although we do not align on a lot of things, um, she did stand, she did not support AB 84, which we're going to get into. So, even though we think very differently, I want to give her credit for backing charter schools and homeschool families on this bill that we'll get into.
Nice, nice. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear because sometimes so used to, especially here in California, it's like you're so used to just party lines and that's
Oh
it.
yeah, no, I'm not a party lines person. I'm identified as a conservative, but I'll work with anybody as long as we align on some things and you protect children and our choices. Then I'm going to give you credit because even as some Republicans, they don't vote with us all the time. So we really have to start looking at issues instead of party lines at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's funny because we're actually gonna, we usually invite, we have open door, right? Any candidate. We've always said Republican, Independent, Democrat, and usually we get the people running on the Republican side. But we're actually gonna have a Democrat come on next month. So, we'll see what he has to say. But, I think like you said, you gotta focus on the issues and not the party line because, there's plenty of Republicans that have disappointed and it has nothing to do with that. But yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So, you've been up in Sacramento, you've been doing your grassroots things. I think you were doing some was it voter ID kind of initiatives and stuff like that. How's
Yeah.
all that going along? And then we'll just kind of get into it.
My plate is so full right now because I just can't accept the things that are happening in California. And I think a lot of families and people need to recognize that there are no lobby groups for families in Sacramento. There are none. There's only
Mm.
special interest groups. And so we're the only ones who are going to be able to bring our issues to the table and negotiate with legislators. So we do a couple of different things. We have two different arms. One, we have Grassroots California Action, and that is a like a parallel GOP where we train people on how to knock on Democrats' doors. We train them on how to collect signatures for ballot initiatives, and we push the new ballot initiative that's going to come out to support voter ID with Carl DeMaio. So we have a lot of things going on to get ready for 2026. And then we also have Freedom Angels, and that's a separate entity that focuses on legislation and policy at local and state levels. So we really, I mean, the people of California want voter ID. We see by overwhelmingly people do support that action. We should have it. And so we're working with all the different networks in California to get that on the ballot and train people how to go out and collect signatures effectively.
Yeah, I didn't. I did see that. I think it was Berkeley and I forget who else. L.A. Times maybe they did a poll,
Mhm.
and 71% of voters uh, agree that if there was a voter initiative on the ballot, they would vote for it. So it kind of goes back to what we were saying. It's not even about party lines. It's about putting something in place that makes sense and the people want.
Yeah, and honestly, like there's going to be some areas in California where Republicans not going to win. And so we have to make the decision, are we going to support a progressive Democrat or are we going to support maybe someone who's a little less extreme and more moderate and give the Republicans something to work with. So we may not, when we say we'll never vote for a Democrat again, if you're in an area, California is top two, so it could
Hmm.
be a Dem race. We want to make sure that we're not just giving our vote to the progressive because they're going to have millions of dollars poured into into that system. So, although I don't agree with the Democrat policies in my district, say there was like a super extreme progressive who was here, someone like Scott Wiener running, I would rather support the Democrat we have in office versus someone like him.
I think everybody.
His constituents love him, so we're not going to get rid of him. Scott
Oh
Wiener's
man.
going to Congress. He's already ready. The legislators are ready for him to leave.
Yeah,
So
I
and
saw.
honestly, he can do less damage here in California if he's up in Congress.
Yeah, I saw he was gonna maybe run for Nancy's seat.
Oh no, he's running, and
Yes.
he's fully intends to win that race.
Okay. How's it going, Danny?
Okay, I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Right, I had to switch some things around. No, but Denise, I wanted to ask you something. I heard you guys talking a little bit about the experience and your run for the assembly. So I want to get your take as far as what you learned and what you saw, because in this regard is when we're out in the streets and we're talking to people, there's a lot of people that agree with what we're saying. Their values align a little bit, well, a lot more with the conservatives, and it's not reflecting on the voter outcome. So, and on top of that, the people representatives representing us, a lot of the times they'll say that they have conservative values, or they might say that they're Republicans, but the way that they're making decisions and voting doesn't reflect that. So, have it, what, in your opinion, why is that? Do they succumb to pressure from somewhere else or something that makes them, not follow you those conservative values, or what's going on there?
So I know there's a couple of legislators, Republicans, that sometimes vote with the Democrats on bad bills, right? Like sex ed and kindergarten, like that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
A lot of times they feel like they're running in a district that maybe they'll lose their support because California is we're pretty liberal. We're not all blue, but we're pretty liberal. So a lot of times they feel like I have to write the fence. Now, one of the jobs and responsibilities of um, the the Republican whip in the Senate, which is Brian Jones, his responsibility is to keep the Republicans in line. And so when there's been a couple of votes, and I kind of like tweet about it, and I'll have like one of the Republicans call me. He's like, "Hey, why are you attacking one of our guys?" Like, it's not an attack. Stay in line. You know what I mean? Like, if your base is conservative, voting for something like sex ed in kindergarten, you're going to lose your base. And so the responsibility lies on us as constituents to contact our legislators, because if you're not contacting them, they don't hear from you. They think that you don't care. You're checked out. But also having the Republican whips in the Senate and the Assembly really start keeping their guys in line and say, hey, it's okay to be moderate sometimes, but there's just some things that we shouldn't be budging from, and that is the protection and of our children and their innocence. So I know probably know who you guys are talking about, but we really have to, contact our legislators, let them know that you're unhappy with some of the things that they're doing, so that way they understand that they will lose their base.
So, a question on what you just said, because we hear that all the time. We hear, call your representative, tell them how you feel, and stuff like that. And I'm gonna be honest with you, when someone says that, the impression that I get is that it's really not gonna do anything.
Hmm.
So, how and you're saying it right now, so it leads me to believe that it does make a difference. So, maybe people that are listening to this that hear that and think what I always thought when someone would say that, hey, call your representative, and tell them what you think. It it really doesn't make a difference, and you should set some time aside, to really do that.
Oh yeah, look, honestly, this is all our fault for where we're at. It's
Hmm.
the legislators' fault, right? Because we vote these guys in, and then we just don't even pay attention. And so, how would you feel? How would you act if you have a position where you can't get fired, nobody's calling you, and you're making bad decisions? You're going to just keep doing what you want to do. So even though we have had a lot of losses in California, we've also had a couple of wins, and it's not a lot, but it goes to show that when you do engage in politics at a local level, that you can make changes. I mean, we stopped the bill. We stopped Scott Wiener's bill out of all the bills, SB 866. And that was done because when we ask you to make a phone call to your legislator, it's because they need to hear the phone's ringing off the hook. If it's quiet and nobody is engaged, of course they're going to do whatever they want to do. So it's our responsibility to engage, and we have one. Like I said, we have one SB 866. We have one against the HPV mandate for children to enter public and private school. We won that by calling our representatives and showing up in the district and at the Capitol. But unfortunately, people don't do anything unless they're uncomfortable, right? They're like,
Mm.
they feel comfortable, they don't want to get engaged, they don't want to participate. And so until people start engaging and making sure that the legislators know who they are, they will do whatever they want to do.
Mm. No, yeah, that's true. That's true. Until it starts affecting you, then you go, "Hey, whoa,
Oh,
what's
yeah.
going on?" And I think you know, COVID was one of those times with the vaccine mandates and all that, and
That
you
was
know,
fun. Yeah, yeah, at the Capitol, and I mean, we had barbers cutting hair on the sidewalk because Gavin said that they had to shut down. We're like, nope, let's cut hair on the sidewalk of the Capitol and let them see that they can't tell you not to work. Those times, people were very uncomfortable, and that's why we had 10,000 people at the Capitol, because they were upset. But for some reason, there's not that type of energy when it has to do with our kids. So we have to create the energy within our groups and get people to see and to understand that the kind of policies that are coming out of the Capitol are meant to prey on children. There's a lot of predatory laws that we're going to talk about. There's actually two bills out that we'll talk about tonight, that target our children, and it targets the removal of our children from our homes and taking them into this different realm of like chosen family and shelters that are ran by the state. It's really a dangerous situation that we're in right now.
Yeah. I just wanted to add something to that. So, this is something that I realized years ago. I was just having a conversation with another father. His children are a little bit younger than mine, so I had a little bit more experience than he did. And in that conversation, he basically said, "Look, I'm here to work, provide, and I'm sending my kids to go learn, and they're going to get taught by the school system." And I think that's like, well, it's not like, it is the biggest problem because if you have that type of mentality, what you just described is exactly what's going to happen. They're not going to be engaged. They're not going to, show any interest in what they're being taught at school because they think that the educators know better than we do. So we need to, remind parents, that they have to be the biggest influence in the kids' lives. So I don't know. I mean, if everything that's going on right now didn't wake them up, I don't know what we have to do to make sure that they are awake.
I mean, we have some really gnarly bills coming out of legislature right now, and you're right. People feel like they're inadequate to teach their kids. I hear a lot of like, what makes you, credible to teach your kid? Well, these kids are learning how to poop in litter boxes, and they're being told that they're like animals. I think we can do better than that. As a parent, if you can read, you can do math, you can teach your children just about anything if once they have those basic understandings. But a lot of times it's not enough to tell people that they can homeschool. What we're doing actually, we have an event coming up August 23rd, and it's going to be a homeschool resource fair where we're going to just be in the park. We did this a couple of years ago. We had like 200 people show up. It was an incredible opportunity, but we'll have booths of like the first steps. How do you pull your kids? How do you find a curriculum? How do
Mm.
you track grades? All of these things that people are so scared of, we're going to introduce this to them so that way they feel more better equipped to go home and say, okay, we're going to take the plunge. We're going to pull our kids. And with the bills that are being introduced right now, I think a lot of parents are going to feel like their backs are against the wall and they're looking for stuff like this.
Hmm. Yeah, and then we bring up Scott Wiener, and it's like it's not just people think, oh, you guys hate his lifestyle. It's like, no, the bills that he's introducing, a majority of them, if not all of them, I feel like remove parental consent, or it's just, yeah, it's targeting the family, it's targeting kids. It's kind of weird. Um, so
Lowering the age of consent too.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's stuff that any parent that, if they're paying attention or they know that that's happening, I think they'd be more vocal. But it takes a little bit of, kind of to what Danny was saying, a little bit of effort to kind of get everyone in the loop because these things aren't talked about. So it just you know goes over everyone's head.
Well, that's why these laws pass because nobody knows. There's like 2,000 bills every legislative session, and we're a year-round legislature. It's almost impossible to pay attention to everything. I mean, we're going to talk about one of the bills that slipped through all of our cracks. Like none of us knew about this bill until yesterday, and it's a really big deal. So people, even when they are engaged, they don't know. And this is again the responsibility of a legislator to come into the community and say, "Hey, I got some really controversial things happening. Like, how do you feel about it as a constituent?" That rarely happens, but when it does, when your legislator has a town hall, this is where you need to be to go and ask him questions that concern you. And with Scott Wiener, a lot of his laws are very, I mean, so predatory. They target children, they target women. He had a bill signed into law in 32. We were working on it for like 3.5 years, and we introduced SB 311 to kind of course correct. And Scott Wiener said, it's only three rates. Like, it doesn't need to be fixed. And we have the data showing that, like, and this bill allows men to transfer into women's prisons. And our bill was asking, like, okay, we're not saying get rid of the whole system, even though I support that. What we're saying is if there was an inmate who was convicted of a violent sexual crime against women and children, then they're not eligible to go to the women's facility. He fought that tooth and nail. He said it was discriminatory and it was just three rapes. It wasn't a big deal, even though there's way more than that and way more issues than that. But they made this into like a hate bill, and it wasn't. But he's one of the most feared legislators right now because he controls the Senate money, the Senate purse. So nobody wants to go against him. So hopefully, I mean, he gets out of here, and like I said, he's going to win the Congress seat, and he can do so much less damage in Congress than he can in our legislature. What he's done is actually awful. And you're right. He's created policies that lower the age of consent, that remove parental rights. It's just been an awful season with him here in California.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, yeah, if he does move on, he's gonna have a hard. I think it's probably better for California if he does. So hey, good luck. But if you want, you referenced the bill. You said that slipped through the cracks on everybody. If you want to expand on that one,
Yeah.
what did we miss? Because if you missed it, I
All of
missed
us missed it.
it.
All of us. We were on a call today. There was like 40 people on there, and nobody even knew about it till yesterday. So it's a big deal. It was like a sleeper bill. It is AB 495, and this is under the guise of making sure, like if a parent was taken in to the detention center and deported and all that stuff, that there would be somebody here able to take care of that child. As it's a simple form that somebody has to fill out, and it's just the child's name, date of birth, your name, and your driver's license and address. And that little piece of paper will then provide that person guardianship over that child. It doesn't have to be a family member, it could be a 5 times removed family member, it doesn't matter. It's just one piece of paper that that person can turn in, and they will be able to make medical decisions for that child. They'll be able to make educational decisions for that child without any due process. And if the parent can't, if the parent doesn't have their signature on this form, there's a checkbox that just says unable to locate parent. So
Mm,
even though this is targeted towards children of illegal immigrants, it actually impacts children who are here because of bills or laws like AB 665. Now, this was passed last year, and it allows 12-year-olds and up to decide if they want to run away from home and check into a residential shelter under the care of the state without parental consent, knowledge, or notification, unless that child said that parent can be notified. So now you're going to have a perfect storm of 12-year-olds, and this pairs with the next bill that we'll talk about. But and again, this is like, I would encourage people to like really build a map of all these bills so that way you can understand like where they're trying to go. But so now you're going to have a 12-year-old able to go to school and say, I don't feel supported by my family, I want to move out of there, I want no contact. That's the biggest thing right now on social media. I want no contact.
Hmm.
That
did we lose her?
I think so.
I think she froze. Um, that's crazy. What she say?
Yeah. Can you text her? See if.
Yeah. Or if she's using her phone, maybe somebody called her. That's why maybe.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha.
Um, I'll text her though. But what do you think so far? What she was saying?
Just my wheels started turning. Is so who could potentially come in and sign that form? You hear stories about people being sponsors,
are you
and
there?
oh yeah, can we can hear you, but we can't see you.
She'll jump back in. What were you saying?
No, it's just like you hear about sponsors, for illegal immigrant children,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just sponsors waiting in line to take them in, and then I think I heard that there's like they found that one sponsor has like 20 kids or something like that, something.
Mm-hmm.
So it just makes me think of that again. Is
Yeah, yeah. And again,
predators already lining up is what I'm saying, to sign this type of paperwork and take responsibility for a child.
yeah, and that's something that we would have to look up. It's like who's introducing that in the in our legislation that's a priority or something that they want to pass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're right. That's something to think about and consider. It's like if someone can just sign that paper and then boom breaks up your family, then it's crazy. No, we lost her again. But yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely look into that one. Let's see.
The question. Oh, there you are.
Is she back?
I can't hear anything.
Oh, you can't hear anything?
Nothing. 1, 2, 1, 2. Live show. Ta ta. No, but what were you gonna say?
Just a question. She said that Bill snuck through. So, how do bills sneak through and not get caught? Is it that they're submitting so many? She said that there's 2,000 a year or something like that. So, is it just that there's so many being submitted that some fall through the cracks, or how does that happen?
I think I think it has to do with. Can you hear us? Oh, she's dropping out again. I think it has to do with just maybe the super majority they have where, but I don't know, right? You would imagine the Republican side of them got would get a little loud on it. So
Hmm.
it is interesting that something like that could just go through. Hmm. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Uh,
While she's getting back on, another focus that that not probably that we should have is, broadcasting this a lot more. This situation.
yeah,
Um, I remember right before the election, it was a big deal. A lot of Scott Wiener was on the news quite a bit, and after the presidential election, everything kind of fell off. I think the Democratic Party tried to reel it back in and get a little bit more centered.
yeah.
Oh, I see her. There.
Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. I think you're muted.
Oh, is she muted?
How about now?
Does that work?
Oh,
Yeah.
now you're there.
There.
Yeah,
The minute I start talking about these bills,
Damn it, you
yeah.
damn liberals.
I know. Oh my gosh, that was like frustrating. Anyways, so yeah, AB 665. Schools can facilitate the child's move, and then they can also take guardianship without any type of due process. So AB 495 was heard yesterday. None of us knew about it. And it's going to be heard again. And I don't have the date yet. I have to look on Legiscan. But it's a serious bill. And all of us are just like scrambling right now trying to figure out how we're going to stop this. So hopefully it gets amended, and if it does, it's going to go back to the assembly, and we'll have the opportunity to fight the bill there.
Denise, I've got a question. You said that it snuck through, right? So, and you mentioned that there's over 2,000, bills submitted in 1 year, right? So, when you say it snuck through, how does it sneak through? Are you saying it gets sneaked through to a certain point where they begin to vote on it, or sneak through as in past? What? How are you referring to it?
There's a lot of sleeper bills. So usually there's some type of like movement that we'll be able to tell. Like usually lobbyists can do it because they get paid to be able to go through all these things. But we're not lobbyists. We're just regular people, right? And so we look on the website Legiscan, and it'll show us all the bills that get introduced, and we're just we weren't expecting a bill like that, so it all just threw us for a loop. And we a lot of us have been working on AB 727 and AB 84, so it slipped through. It was just like one of those weird things that we weren't able to catch in Legiscan. But it was real quiet. Nobody was talking about it. No legislators were talking about it. The author didn't make a big stink. So it was just one of those ones that a freak accident. So we have that. The next one we have is AB 727. This is a super dangerous bill. This will mandate that schools provide the Trevor Project resource to children 13 and then adults up to 24. Now, there's no age requirement as far as verification. I was able to make an account on there, and I said my birthday was like 2011, and I was let into everything. I got into all the chat rooms. So what this is, so in California, we have a 988 number. Now, this number is for like the suicide hotline. And it's mandated in California that every high school student has this on the back of their ID card.
Mm.
Well, now, Assemblymember Mark Rodriguez or Gonzalez, he's a very progressive Democrat, introduced this bill that will force and mandate all schools. He tried to get private Christian schools to do it, but it got amended out. That's how far he wanted to go with this. But it will mandate every child in public school have the Trevor Project linked on their back of their card. Now, when a kid texts that number or they call it, they'll be able to make an account on the website. And so now these kids have this website that have secret chat rooms like gay men, littles, which is age regression, chosen family, witchcraft, all of these different secret chat rooms, and
Nice.
any member in there can connect with other members. So you're gonna have like 13-year-old boys on there saying, "Hey, I'm just looking for friends. Like I'm dealing with stuff." A 24, 54, 64 man will then be able to privately message that person and send them pictures, send private messages. I have a flyer that shows there's like um, a post saying, "Oh, I love being a lesbian. I promise a 16-year-old boy." Like weird stuff like that. And so it passed. It passed out because the legislators conflated that with we want to protect LGBT youth. They conflate
Always.
that with the Trevor Project. And the Trevor Project receives millions of dollars in taxpayer money and grants. And so we're, talking to different people in the world of human trafficking, and they're saying the Trevor Project is a really big deal and it's a very predatory website, very easy to groom children, very easy to kidnap children. And this will also align with AB 495 because if you have a kid who's like, my family does not understand me. I hate my mom. There's even a page that says, is your mom garbage? We have a new mom for you. So I hate my mom. She doesn't understand me. She doesn't want me to be, dressed like this, dressed like that. They can then go into these sites and say, I hate my mom. She did this to me. And then this person, this adult, will have access to them. And then with AB 495, they'll say, you can come to a chosen family. I'll sign for you. I'll be your guardian. And now they've been able to successfully take that child out of the home.
That is so crazy. Is the very first thing that you started saying with describing that? That's the first word that came to my mind. Predatory. I mean, it's prime for predators to go in there.
It
Wow.
is the perfect storm. They've created this perfect way to separate families and and right now you guys see it on social media. There's all the rage of like, you can leave your family, no find your own. There's even those stupid boosts like free mom hugs. If you don't like your mom, I'm your new mom now. There's so all these different things that mess with kids' heads. And I have a very vulnerable 14-year-old son. And he's very trusting of people, and he's going through all these different emotions, and he's gay and he's scared and all these things. But then you have these groups and social media pressing that families don't understand and don't want, they don't want you to be gay. It's not about that. It's about protecting the innocence of our kids. And if you're gay, if you're straight, whatever, you're my kid. None of that matters. I want to make sure that you're happy and that you're healthy and that you're protected and safe. I don't think any parents really, really, really care about their children's sexuality like that. I mean, there's some instances, but for the most part, we just want to make sure our kids are safe. And these types of laws and websites poison our kids' minds to make them feel and believe that families are dangerous.
Hmm. Well, and it goes into an issue that a lot of parents have with education in the school, where the teacher can talk to your child about all this, and again, you don't even know. So you can be trying your hardest to, like you said, make sure they're happy. But if they're with this teacher, 8 or 9 hours a day, that's just constantly throwing negativity about the family to this child, and it just, like you said, it just opens all kinds of doors to all kinds of things, and it's really disappointing. It's crazy in a
It's
sense.
damaging.
It's believable, but it's like unbelievable. It's like I don't know how to explain it. I don't
That's
even know what to
exactly
say.
what I was gonna say. It's unbelievable. Look, at the age that I am right now, I never thought that, I got started young as a father. Let's just say, when I was 20, is, I became a dad at 18, and my daughter started going to school right around when I was, 23. And I never thought that we would have to worry about this. It never entered my mind. Why aren't we talking about, the grades? California is what, the 45th, place in the nation, in the country. Why aren't we talking about that? And we're talking about, these bills that are being passed. It's crazy. I never thought that we would be here.
I know it's. I mean, we kind of saw this like back in 2015 when they started implementing vaccine mandates. We kind of started seeing the writing on the wall, and Senator Richard Pan at the time, he had this whole thing called Children's Bill of Rights. We defeated that bill, but what we're seeing now is pieces of his bill. So he had this big bill that was like, the school can take care of the kids, the parents can't make medical decisions after 12. Like he had all these pieces, and when we defeated it. These legislators after him started bringing them in piece by piece. So we kind of seen it already, and and to go back to your point of what's being taught in schools, that's why a lot of families homeschool. My family
Mhm.
specifically, I homeschool for different reasons, multiple different reasons. The first one is my son is not allowed in public or private school because he's unvaccinated, and I don't want him to be exposed to the type of curriculum that these schools are giving these kids. So we homeschool. And a lot of families homeschool, and a lot of families can only homeschool through a charter because charters help provide for like enrichment and extracurricular activities. And what's happening now in California on our last bill that we're going to talk about is AB 84. Now, this one is specific, it's attacking homeschoolers. It is not like a
Mhm.
targeted, the legislator trying to say this is targeted to bring transparency to charter schools and about money and all these things. But if you read some of the issues that they're having with it, it's more of a targeted. They don't want it, the bill is so broad that it can be interpreted that parents can no longer rent out spaces from churches for their co-ops because they don't want money, taxpayer money, going to religious
Mm.
Mm.
curriculum because you can't use religious curriculum in charter schools. But all of these things are already in place. You already can't do that. So it's just like one of those bills that we see it's going to come after not just charter schools, comes after homeschoolers
Mm.
on day, vendors, all the thousands of small businesses that support these families. And it's just interesting that for 6 years, Al Marisucci, who's the author of the bill, he's ignored charter schools for 6 years. That's how long he's been there. But he is now running for the superintendent of public education, and his biggest backer is the California Teachers Association. And
Mm.
so he's doing this to appease them because he's going to need money to run for office. And they said it on the hearing that they want children in person learning. So now these kids who maybe don't do well in traditional public school, my kid who's not even allowed into public school, and it it is going to destroy, like literally destroy the education opportunities for foster youth because they are the ones that really utilize non-classroom based charter schools as well, and incarcerated youth. If they don't want to get their GED and they want to graduate from school, this is the program they use. And now Al Maristucci, Democrat, is attacking education instead of all the other things that we're dealing with, and he's running for superintendent. You would think he wouldn't want to attack. Oop, my battery's gonna die. Shit. He wouldn't want to attack that very entity he wants to control. But here we are, right? So
Mm.
this is going to be heard in Senate Education. We have a huge event July 14th. It is a statewide protest, well, silent rally in opposition of AB 84. We are going into every senator's district office. We're having constituents there. We're telling them to build a relationship with those legislators. And this is one of the bills that we have a pathway to kill it. We need, so in the Senate, we need 20 senators to block this bill. We have 10 Republicans. They're on our side. We make sure that they're going to vote with us. During our grassroots advocacy, we got two senators to come out publicly. We got Weber Pearson from San Diego to come out publicly, and we had Catherine Blakespeare in Southern California to come out publicly and say, you know what, I hear your concerns. I'm not going to vote for this bill, which is a huge deal considering they're Democrats. And so we have also Reyes, Eloise Reyes. She's out right now, so she's not going to be a vote. So that goes to us. So we have 13. We have had really, really good conversations with a lot of the senators, five in particular, that we feel pretty good that they're going to be off the bill. So that means that we need two. We have
Mm.
one that we're heavily working on, and it looks like she may be a swing vote. So that means that we need one. So if we can get everybody to participate in this, contact their legislator, show up on the 14th, like in McNerney here in Stockton. McNerney is still not a public anything, which he should be. Um, if we can get him, then we have our one. So we have the ability to stop this bill. And on top of it costing $60 million just to open an office to oversee that agency, like it's like an oversee agency that doesn't even need to exist, costing us $60 million in a budget crisis. Where in California they cut Medi-Cal to some people because Medi-Cal's bankrupt. So instead of investing in that, they're now taking even more money to attack education.
Wow. I, some of this stuff like just makes
Sorry.
no sense. Like, trying to make sense of what they're doing or why they do. Like you said, right? If he's running, that guy's running to run all of education. Like, why would you attack education before trying to make that leap? Shout out Sonia Shaw. Um,
Oh
but
yeah,
you,
so she's running for state superintendent. Everybody in the state can vote for her. I encourage you guys to go look at her website.
Yeah, me too. But it doesn't. A lot of the times we talk on the podcast, we say make it make sense, and man, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just not smart enough, but these issues and these bills, I can't make sense of them. You know, I'm trying, but
Yeah.
it's just it's unbelievable.
Our kids are cash cows. I mean, this is from straight up from the playbook of Mao. Like control the children, and you build yourself a little army of children, and you remove the parents from the
Mhm.
equation. I mean, this is the Children's Bill of Rights. California, at 12 years and up, have medical privacy. They can get abortions without parental notification. They can even go on. They can even start the process of medically transitioning. I mean, kids have almost basically full autonomy to do whatever they want, yet they create laws that say, you can't vape because, under 26, your frontal lobe isn't developed yet they're passing all these kinds of laws that really remove children from families. So when people are talking about separating families, they need to look at California, because this is the
Yeah.
map of what the nation will look like, because how California goes, so goes every other state. And the goal is to separate families. That's what they want to do.
You
Sorry,
used to, no.
talk about stuff, and then people like they just don't. It's a lot. It's
Mm,
very easy to have to deal with all this stuff, but this is the where we're at in the state, and
yeah.
why people don't know what's going on. It's a lot. It's a lot to follow.
No, and it's like you said, right there, you can't vape till you're 26, but you can do all this. It's like another one of those things where, like, I can't make that make sense, but that's what they're rolling with, you
Yeah.
know. Um, yeah, it it's not shocking, but it does. What do you call it? It when you hear all this and you realize, like, oh man, they're really trying to pass all these kind of things. It just, I guess when you say it out loud, it's like, oh man, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't.
And okay, so I like to think that I'm not a pessimist, I'm an optimist, right? So when you start hearing about all these different things, it kind of does put you like in a negative space because you feel pretty helpless, right? But going back to the point that you made, reach out to your
Mhm.
representatives and stuff like that, and make those phone calls and make your voice heard. Make sure that they know that you're paying attention. Basically, that's what we need to focus on in order to turn this around. I don't see any other solution other than that. And you know, okay. So the good thing is that we are talking about it. Okay, talk about optimism, right? So we
Mhm.
are talking about it. We are starting to pay attention to it. Hopefully, other people start paying attention to it. Um, but it always brings me back to that point where I invested so much time of my life, knowing all these stats for sports and things like
Oh,
that.
mhm,
And this is what's happening in our backs. You know,
mhm.
it's like we need to. Oh, there you are. We need to let all that other stuff go and pay attention to this. It's like we're getting fooled, and we need to open our eyes.
Yeah, all this stuff is like, if people don't get involved, this stuff's gonna pass. You know what I mean? Like minus AB 84, that we have some pathway just because the legislators use charter schools for their kids. That's really what it is. We have one
Mm,
senator like, I'm not going to be the CTA charter school killer. They know that this is all politicized, and it just pisses me off that they've politicized our kids' education so much that they're willing to take away the opportunities, and they say, oh well, public school kids don't get to do that kind of stuff. Well, maybe they should. Maybe instead of all this money going to administration and CTA and all these other organizations that couldn't care less about our kids. Clearly, because 27% of children in California are only at literacy level with math. I mean, this is crazy. So instead of all that, how about you do invest in these kids and give them the same opportunities that homeschool families and charter school families try to give to our kids? We want to give them enrichment. We want to give them different opportunities, and we want to get them prepared for the real world with fiscal responsibility and teaching them how to, grow food. And there's a school that was, I think, like in Australia or something, that their students created a food forest, and it was able to feed their entire town
mm,
because part of these kids like education piece. So instead of trying to force kids into a public school system that does not work for everybody, how about we reinvest in our community and give these public school kids the same opportunities that charter school kids get? But they're not ready to have that kind of conversation. Our kids are cash cows. They just want them in the seat.
And then and some charter schools or some homeschools, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there some programs where even like the parents get some kind of funding, like a certain amount of money per year to help with
Yeah, that's what
sort of
charter
thing?
schools
Does it
do.
affect that too then? I'm imagining
Yes.
it would.
Yes,
Okay.
it affects all funding. It actually slashes a lot of the funding. It makes it illegal for some charter schools to operate, and it would put a bunch of vendors out of business. So, like for charters and homeschools, it's like an ecosystem. Like the charter schools use different vendors for like behavioral therapy, speech therapy, and then we also, as families, get a certain amount of money at the end of the year that to go to enrichment. And those enrichment opportunities, like music lessons or art lessons,
Mhm.
they have to be approved by the school. So there's not even this type of fraud that they're talking about. And when there is fraud, we already have a system in place that, like, there's been two cases that, one like 3 years ago and one recently, where the school wasn't shouldn't have gotten the money that they got, but they got audited and they got caught. So clearly we have a system in place that already takes care of that. What Al Marisucci is trying to do, he's trying to kill homeschools and charter schools and get our kids into public education. And if that happens, I'm going to have to move. And I've always said I would never move because I love California, but I wouldn't have an option because my kid's not allowed into either private or public.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, we've said that many times too. Like we don't plan on leaving the state, but and it's not easy for people to do, right? Also.
Oh, it's not. It's hard to live here. It's very expensive, and it's very expensive to move. And we shouldn't have to, because honestly, every state in this nation is dealing with a version of what we're dealing with. We're just more extreme. Texas has issues with medicalizing minors for the transitions. They have the same curriculum that we do. Um, we're just able to, California just does it, but people in Texas think they're safe. No state is safe. And when you start moving, then you're going to allow them to have a land grab and take your state. So the best thing you can do is stay, fight, get involved, and have a plan B, because politics isn't everything, right? Like we have
Mhm.
to be able to have a plan B, make sure that our family's safe, learn how to homeschool, learn how to grow food, build your network, and be able to like not outsource as much.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We talked to several people that have moved out of state, well, specifically Texas, and that's one of the points that we made is that that's this is coming there,
Hmm.
and they're just perfecting it here so
Yep.
that they can implement it everywhere. So You're right. We just have to stand up and defeat these people.
Yes. I feel like my phone's gonna die, so you're gonna see me move around in just a minute. I gotta go get my charger.
No worries. Um, but yeah, I mean, we can. It's good to hear about all this. Like you were kind of saying, Danny, right? It's like, oh, wouldn't imagine you'd have to be talking about this kind of stuff, in your lifetime, but here we are, and we hope that that bill does get killed, and that people are able to choose, what school they want to send their kid to, whether it's charter, private, public, you know what I mean? Whatever the parent deems to be fit for their situation. Um, I think people should keep that freedom, that ability to have that option, so
Parents should be able to choose, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Especially, we pay taxes in schools, and like for my family, we pay taxes. We can't utilize the school system. And so, why go after education right now? With all the things happening in this state, we are broke. We're in
Yeah.
$20 billion deficit. We're at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to education. Our structure is damaged. We saw that with the fires. All of these things happening, and this guy decides to attack charter schools and homeschool families. It's clearly for his political run. So when you see El Marisucci's name on your ballot for the superintendent of public education, just know that he couldn't care less about education. All he cares about is the money that he's getting from the California Teachers Association.
Hmm. Yeah. You got anything, Danny?
Um, no, I mean, just thank you, for bringing this up, coming on, and educating us on this and what to look out for. We'll continue to be vigilant. While you were off a little bit, I was talking to Daniel, and this is something that we need to focus on, and provide more information so people get educated. And if we could bring focus, for at least another 5 people or something like that, that I would say that that's a win.
Hmm.
um but yeah, no, just thank you for what you're doing and bringing attention to it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for having me on. If anyone is interested in joining us on July 14th, we are working off the app banned. Social media takes me off all the time. They censor the information, they delay the information, and this requires like real time strategy. So if you want to be a part of this, you can download the app ban. It's like a little green icon, and then you can close that out and put in your search engine, stop AB tiny URL. Sorry, my kid.
You're good. You're good.
tinyurl.com/stop AB84 coalition. Or you can go to my website, theinformmama.org, and I have a link there. We need all hands on deck. It doesn't matter if you're a PSA, it doesn't matter if you're a charter school. This is here. When people say like, "Oh, it's not here. It's not for PSAs yet." The battle's here already. I hope you get involved, protect your kids' education, and we have a real chance at defeating this bill. So thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on, and we'll stay in touch. We'll keep an eye on what you're doing, and yeah, I think what you're doing, is important, and it helps out a lot. That's why we had you on the Watchdog series, because you're out there, right? You're at the Capitol. You're talking to these people that are trying to introduce these bills and all that, and you're out there fighting. So
Yeah.
we appreciate that. We're thankful that there's people like you out there.
Thank you. And I love the new series name. Watch. Good. All right. Well,
Thanks
thank you
for
guys
coming.
so much. And I guess I'll talk to you guys soon.
Sounds good.
All right.
Have a good
Bye.
one, Denise. Let me switch this up real quick. Oh man, yeah. Like I was saying, man, we try to make sense of everything. Sometimes it's like, whoa.
Yeah, no, as she was kind of going through that type, explaining the bills and how they're attacking um homeschooling and things like that.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna lie, it sits like a dark cloud. It changes the mood, and it
Hmm.
brings you into a darker place. But we can't let that happen. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know if you experienced that right now when she was talking about the bills, but that kind of hit me a little bit right now.
Well, I think it's part of like the. I would say probably yeah, because it's like I don't even know
How to react to it.
how to react, what to say, like you know what I mean. Like it's one of those things where it takes you like a minute to be like, hmm, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but again, it's also not. It's not surprising that these kind of things
No, I
are.
mean, we've known that, Scott Wiener, you know, it's no secret, what his agenda is, in, all of California, I guess. So you're right. It's not a surprise. We shouldn't be surprised, but it's still shocking. It doesn't change the fact that it's shocking that they're actually doing this. This is almost like out of a movie, to be honest with you. It's like, in order for me to believe it, it's almost like out of a movie that they're doing this. I would imagine that they're introducing bills to improve school education as far as the curriculum, or improving, I don't know, helping rather than hurting. It's crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, man. It's hey, like we say, make it make sense, and it is hard to make sense of this stuff.
And it's not the first time that we've spoken to her or someone else,
Hmm.
and they bring up the lobbyist, and stuff like that. And it's like, I think that's one thing that people forget a lot, is that there's so many moving parts to bills being introduced and passed and becoming law and stuff like that, that there's a lot of people behind this, and it's like the lobbyist,
Hmm.
who who
Well, and the
what's their
unions too.
motivation, I mean, I know they get paid and stuff like that, but um
I mean, for something like this, like yeah, if you're a lobbyist on this, like yeah, you have like it's a good question. Like why? Why are you lobbying on this? And the unions, like the teacher union, you know, I'm
and
sure they
where's the
benefit
money coming from to support this, right?
probably. It's probably gonna be our well
Tax dollars, yeah.
tax dollars. I mean, like she said, right? She said her kid can't go to private or public school, but you know, our kids are homeschooled, but we still pay property taxes here,
Yeah.
which are used for California schools. Most, I believe most of it is used for that. And it's like, is that just going from there? Because again, like as we've talked about, like these past couple weeks on most of the stuff that we've been putting out, you know,
Hey, look,
are
so
the
I,
results even visible of what supposedly our money's been going to?
yeah, I just I did a little search on how to defeat bills, like this.
Hmm.
And one of the things that popped up was to here, I'll read it to you. Launch a social media campaign, hashtags, Instagram Reels, TikToks,
Break the
Twitter,
blue wave.
X X threads, and stuff like that. So it's like there there's not a whole lot. I mean, it didn't mention, call your legislatures and stuff like that. Um, but now with Denise saying that, I think she mentioned it the other time when she was on, but I was completely honest and transparent. What I feel every time someone says something like that, as far as picking up the phone and calling your legislatures and letting them know how you feel. But if it does make a difference, you know, we've got to start doing that. We've
Hmm.
got to start doing that. I mean, we're trying to do our part with what I just read off. Start a social media campaign. So you know, maybe we just focus on that more, bring more awareness to it.
I mean,
But
that's where, you know, that's where people are, you know?
hmm
It's like, yeah, you can knock doors and all that, and that's fine. That's probably, that's needed too. But a majority of people are online. Getting like, for example, like on what we post, I think we were talking about the other day. It's like, you know, we get what did I say? 206,000 people is like what our content ends up reaching,
okay.
and it's like, you know, how else am I going to talk to 200,000 people?
Well, you know,
So it's a, yeah, obviously it's good, and it's got its pros and cons.
yeah. Well, here's the thing: is that when she was running, you know, and Jim Shoemaker, I did hit the ground,
Hmm.
and went door to door, trying to spread the word and stuff like that. But people don't want to open up the door. You
Yeah.
did talk to people, and you made some good connections and stuff like that. But unfortunately, the overwhelming majority don't want to answer their doors. And why? They're inside the house scrolling through their phone.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, building a social media campaign is a really good idea. And I wrote it down. We need to focus more on this. And I wanted to make a really good point about that. At least I think it's a good point. Is that on social media, once a topic is hot, it's kind of like jump on the bandwagon, and
Mm.
everybody starts kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
rowing in the same direction when it comes to that, and it becomes a real big echo chamber. Like, what's the hot topic today? You
Hmm.
know, and everybody just goes with it. And look at that. We could say that's a huge distraction because she's talking about these bills that snuck through, or not even sneaking through. They know about them,
Hmm.
and no one's paying attention to them. So it's like, look at what the right hand's doing, and but don't look at the left hand type of thing. So when I say that, we're asleep at the wheel, it sounds kind of messed up, but that's the truth. I mean, am I wrong? Do you disagree with that?
No, no, no. I don't. That makes a lot of sense. It's a valid point, and it's true because, yeah, you see, whatever is the trending topic, right? That's what people are jumping on, you know. And for the most part, a lot of them, not that we're anything special, but a lot of them literally are saying the same shit.
Yeah. It it's like those reels that they put together with the major networks, where they're parroting the same message.
Same thing.
It's the same thing. They
Yeah.
just learned how to control it with social media now, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, without it being like verbatim, like, but you can get all those clips and put them together, and you have, you know, a whole choir of news anchors saying the same thing. It's like word for word. They've made it so that you have a bunch of people online, maybe not word for word saying the same thing, but in the same, verbatim, but they mean the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're
They're pushing the same message.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. So, I don't know. I think it takes a little bit of, oh, what'd you say last time? Did you say just people that like aren't thinking I forget what you said. You said something last time we talked. They're like not critically thinking, so
Oh, yeah.
they're
They
just on that one thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost like tunnel vision,
Hmm.
and they don't see anything else of what's going on. They just get that tunnel vision, and there's no critical thinking.
And
It's like,
and that's the con to social media, because you get people like that with even bigger of a reach. You know what I mean?
hmm hmm
And you know, it's just non critical thinking, repetitive. to a point repetitive nonsense.
Yeah. And to expand on that, okay, so all this technology can be manipulated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if this is something that someone wants to talk about and content is being pushed out on it, right? So let's just, for example, these bills, right? Um, but the social media, depending on who's running it or what their agenda is, which is straight up, dude, it's pedophilia driven. If you're lowering the age of consent and you're trying to expose and groom kids, to these type of things, that's what comes to my mind. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but call me crazy, but that's what my opinion is. But if they control the algorithms and social media and all of that stuff, it doesn't matter what happens around anybody. If they're going to push the agenda, the content that they want to accomplish,
Mm-hmm.
you know, someone m- could disagree with that, but that makes sense with me.
What goes into like the not to kind of bring it up, but like the whole recent like Candace and Tucker thing, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, it's like it's that to me.
Yeah, it's like we're focusing on what those people's opinions are
Mm-hmm.
when we've got bigger fish to fry in front of us in our state, in our county, in our cities.
Mm-hmm.
It's like let's get the our eye on the ball. What really matters. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what's happening, it does matter, but we've talked about it. We started the series about get to know your candidate. They don't want us to get to know our candidate. They don't want us to focus on what's happening under our nose.
Mm-mm. No, they want us to just show up, vote for the letter next to the name that we think maybe best either fits what we're looking for, or I that's all they want. They want uninformed voters not knowing who their candidates are, not knowing what their candidates are running on. They just want people to show up and vote.
Yeah. Hey, what's that movie Idiocracy?
Hmm.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
It.
think that's what they're striving for, man. Tell me if you remember the movie, or I don't know if you want to pull up the um
Ah, yeah, no. The here I'll look.
what the plot is. Um,
I'll have my homeboy Grok explain explain the plot. Dude, how that movie's from
the '90s, I think, right?
the 1900s.
The the 1900s.
It's a let's see, sci-fi comedy directed by Judge. It says an average army librarian and Rita, a sex worker, are picked up for a secret military experiment. Okay, yeah, that's where they're putting the hibernation pods. They wake up and basically 500 years later, everyone is dumb. Everyone's
Dumb
an
as a
idiot.
rock.
Everyone's an idiot.
Do you remember it now?
Yeah, yeah, I remember. I remember. Yeah, he wakes up and there's trash well, here we go. Trash
Hey,
everywhere. Damn.
they
Uh,
told us they told us what they wanted to do, and they did it.
yeah. Damn.
And then, if I remember correctly, the main character was pretty dumb. But when he wakes up, I don't know how many years later, he's basically the smartest guy
Yeah,
in the
everyone's IQ was way lower than his. Shit. But we're trying to combat that, right? We're trying to use what we do, I would say, in a positive, informative matter that isn't um I'd like to think we're not trying to get people to be reactionary, but more thoughtful.
You know, this is gonna sound so freaking cheesy. All right, so we're Latinos, right? Somos mexicanos americanos, right? Or americanos mexicanos, however you want, whatever you want to call us. Pochos, chicanos, whatever.
Nopal.
That's yeah, nopal. That's what we are. So hence Latino free minds, right? So um, we're just encouraging people to have free minds. It doesn't matter if
Hmm.
you're Latino or not, but just be a free mind. Remember when I told you that I listened to a podcast and they were they were asking basic questions like "Who are you?" and
Hmm.
stuff like that, and people really didn't know how to answer that question like originally, because everything that they thought or they thought they had an original thought, it was influenced by something else. So at the end of the day, you can't really say that you're a free mind. Do you know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah, yeah. You still got other things that influence your thought process. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we sit down and we think about it just for, a few minutes, I like when I'm driving to work, I like to have my meditation time, and I'll just say, I pray. I've got a decent commute, to go to work,
Hmm.
and I pray. I recently started doing it, and it really does help me. And I start thinking about things that I wouldn't think about, the entire day if it wasn't for that. And it's kind of the part of the rat race, just keep us occupied and really not focus on what's important. But i I guess I'm mature enough at the stage of my life where I could say that I don't know if I have original thoughts. If someone can say that with confidence, 100% confidence, I think you're lying to yourself. um, and you have to come to that realization, to really think about that and ask yourself, and are my thoughts original? Is this something
Mm.
coming genuinely from me, or am I being influenced? Am I being manipulated? And if, like I said, if you think that you are, I think you need to reevaluate and really think about it. Just something to think about.
Yeah, no, I think, like, yeah, people people's minds are molded by, what they see and hear. They, different perspectives, and maybe in a sense you make it your own, or it helps you come to a conclusion. But yeah, you're right. It's hard to say that you aren't influenced at all by nothing, and you're completely free minded, right? Basically, it's like, yeah, there is things in there that I think, yeah, true, you pick up from people.
And I don't think it's necessarily bad, right?
Hmm.
Because you know when you're a child, you don't have a choice into what family or what ethnicity or whatever background you're born into.
Hmm.
So you're influenced by that, right? But so I don't mean it in a negative way, but more of a positive way into thinking about it and really dissecting it is all I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, we're we're nobody special, but we try to be honest, and we try to be, again, I think we try to be thoughtful with what we do. We don't try to go with the flow of whatever is
Hot at the
hot
moment.
at the moment. Yeah, I think we try to keep it as balanced, as non-narrative as possible, but still providing you information that affects you, right?
Yeah, that's relevant, and important.
Yeah. So,
So, like I wrote down, we need to focus on, putting out some more information in regard to this. So maybe we can talk about, shifting or adding a, some incorporating this into what we the message that we're putting out. So
Yeah. No, and we got a lot of um things coming up. So we got LFM, which is this. We have the guys that don't mind us. Silva and McKenna are starting there. California Unfiltered, which is all kind of in a sense connected, right? But it's just different avenues, and where we're trying to use these platforms that are available, um, you know, to have conversations. That was the goal when we started Latino Free Minds, right? Is to make sure people make these conversations cool, so that families are talking to each other about these things instead of it being what's that word? Um, you know, Families don't have these conversations because they're either awkward or it's problematic and or whatever it could be, right? Um, but different avenues for people to listen to things and maybe get a perspective they maybe didn't have before. And it's not that we're trying to influence you. It's just, hey, think about it and whatever you decide. I think that's always been kind of how we roll.
yeah, I like the term blind spots. We've got blind spots. So
Mhm.
in a lot of those blind spots, I mean, it could be something really important. If you're a parent, I think this would be really important for you to hear about, understand, and learn about it, right?
Mhm.
So it's just we're turning the mirror a little bit so you could see that blind spot, and we're learning at the same time too. So we're gonna have Chad Bianco,
Mhm.
get to know your candidate series, and I'm super proud and excited that we've been doing that because we've seen the difference between how many interviews have we had already? Three.
Three
and
candidates.
and the difference between the first one to the third one, we're understanding more, we're gaining more knowledge,
Mhm.
and the people that we have spoken to have been really knowledgeable. They've got different perspectives. Now we can see the vision that other people have, and see the possibilities. A lot of the things, I do say, hey, how is that? It sounds good, but how is that going to be possible? It sounds like it's going to take a very long time to accomplish that and stuff like that. But we're going to have follow up interviews with them too. And then, we'll cater the questions based on what I just said. It's like, hey,
Mhm.
that's a really good proposal, really good idea, but what's the time frame on that?
Yeah.
Um, and things can't get done overnight. I mean, come
Mm.
on. I you drive by a building that's being you know it's under construction with the state or the city, and it takes years to get done. High speed rail.
Too real. Yeah.
And then you see a car wash getting put up in freaking months.
Mhm.
It's private, and they get things done a lot faster. So um a good follow-up question is, what's the plan behind that?
Mhm.
Are you going to start the process to get it done, and what's the timeline? Because it's not going to be able to get done in the time frame of
Yeah.
you know
Mhm.
what they would be governor for and stuff like that. So we need to there's really good follow-up questions being built up right now. So uh
Mhm. I think California overall, just in general, kind of just my little opinion there. I
yeah.
think that a lot of the issues that we have, whether it's infrastructure or whatnot, if we used the the private sector
Oh yeah.
instead of government, I think a lot of that could get done in a term. You know what I mean?
Very
Which
possible.
when you have, and I don't know what, I think one of the guys brought it up. It might have been Zachy on the last one, but when you make it competitive, right? For, you know, right? Which company out there is gonna give us a good price on these roads and get it and actually get it boom, get the roads smooth and boom, ready to go. I mean, have some competition there, you know.
Yeah,
What company's gonna, if the goal is to not abandon the high speed rail because it's been so much invested, it's like, all right, which company's gonna come in and actually get this done?
true.
You know, like
It,
if there was some privatization of this infrastructure and stuff like that, I think California would look nice. That's the issue, right? We've been talking about it for weeks. We
that
we give all this money, and what do we see?
yeah, that's
You know.
a really good point that you just made right now because with that competition, you know, we're talking about competition with cost too. So remember when we would hear about, in Sacramento on a federal building where they're putting in bathrooms and a toilet cost freaking $10,000 and stuff like that?
Hmm.
And that's what that competition that you're talking about would breed is
Hmm.
competitive price, competitive timelines,
Oh yeah.
to complete the project and stuff like that. So, and those are things that, your everyday person doesn't really think about. They start believing the hype that, it really does take that long, to accomplish something, to get something done. But the reality is that there's so much red tape that it
Hmm.
it makes it impossible to get it done in a timely manner. So, eliminating the red tape, um, introducing more competition. Yeah, you're right. It
I
it
feel like
would.
that would yeah, that would solve a lot. Those two things right there would solve a lot of issues in California. You know,
Yeah.
even when it comes to like the grid and all that, PG&E. You know, PG&E doesn't have to perform because hey, who are they competing with? If they got a majority of the state to themselves, right? You got
Yeah.
Edison, I think, is in SoCal, and I think there's one more, and I forget the name of it because it's not up here. What incentive do they have to be better? What incentive do they have to not raise their prices? I believe PG&E had rate hikes 6 or 7 times. I mean, I could be off in the past year.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's going to stop them? You know, it's like a Democrat supermajority. What's going to stop them if that's what it is? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I hear you. I hear you. Well, I'm excited. Okay, so hearing Denise talk about those bills got me a little bit down. I'm gonna admit it, but I'm over it. Now I'm excited. We can do something about it. We are gonna do something about it. Like you said, it's not like, you know we're at some status or level where, we can really, make a difference or a dent. But I've always told you, if five people
Hmm.
can, hear the message, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all you got to do. We just need one person, 5 people, an easy share. That's all it takes. You know what I mean? And that's all we want. We've never been too caught up on numbers and stuff like that. You know, but it is, for us. You see, like, oh yeah, you can, you reach 206,000 people. That's like wow.
Yeah.
And you know, but as long as we're able to like you said, reach. It doesn't have to be big, but the message gets through. Someone helps someone. Maybe someone hears it when they're thinking about this or that. And if we could be a help to anyone in that way, cool. You know,
Yeah.
without without pushing them, into like, no, you have to be like this. You have to think this way. You have to agree with this. You have to not agree with that. You know what I mean? I think it's just everybody's their own mind, so to speak, right? And yeah, to get a bunch of random people to agree 100% on everything,
It's not gonna happen.
it's not going to happen. We got to be able to find what's the common ground and then attack that, you know?
Yep.
And then once that's settled, then yeah, we can start, okay, let's talk about this and how are we going to solve this. But if we let the little things, well, some of them are kind of big, but if we let the small differences that we have control us being able to tackle what we do agree on, then they got us, right?
Yeah.
They got us where we are.
So I don't think anybody likes to be lied to, manipulated, made a fool of. So that's all we're saying is we know we're not 100% right. We don't agree on everything,
Mhm.
but be a free mind. Don't be a follower. And
Be Where's the little lion? Be a lead.
oh yeah, lead. Yeah.
Just
Oh,
be a lead, you know, in your
right
home and
here.
wherever. Just lead. Don't follow. Don't let anybody tell you how to think. Um, we got big things, big hopes. Like Danny said, right? We're optimistic. We got big hopes for 2026, and you know, we talked about it. We feel California is always a blue wave. We all hate the fact that the polls close at 8 p.m. and all the winners are announced at, you know, 8 p.m. in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
We don't like that.
No, it's even worse. They're announced before the polls even close, bro. That's
7:59.
and that's the truth.
You're right. I was
You
trying to be
know.
nice.
Hey, at the beginning of the day, it's already it's already decided before
You're right.
anybody votes.
You're right. Right. 0 votes counted. Kamala
Yeah.
Harris wins.
Zero
Damn.
votes. Yeah, exactly. Zero votes. Kamala Harris, winner.
We're tired of that blue wave. So
Yeah.
that's where we're optimistic. And that's why if you follow us, we've been using hashtag break the blue wave 26 because that's our goal. So yeah, man, I think this was a good one. Shout out to everybody that's watching. I hope that if you're watching for the first time, hit that follow, that like, subscribe, all the good stuff that every other podcast tells you to do. If you want to do it for us, cool. If not, we're still here.
Still cool.
Yeah, it's still cool. All right, man. You got anything else?
No, that's it. Just peace be with you.
Peace.